Russia shares land borders with 14 countries: Norway, Finland, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, Belarus, Ukraine, Georgia, Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, China, Mongolia, and North Korea. Tied with China for the most of any country in the world. Its frontier stretches from the frozen Arctic Ocean to the rugged mountains of the Caucasus and deep into the dense forests of the Far East. Along the way, it cuts across a huge variety of landscapes. So first, let's take a look at where the border actually goes. Picture tracing a line that starts in Norway, crosses through Finland, zigzags past the Baltic states, dips down through Belarus and Ukraine, sweeps around the Black Sea into Georgia and Azerbaijan, then cuts eastward along Kazakhstan's vast steppe, brushing Mongolia, skimming China, grazing a slice of North Korea, and finally spilling out into the Pacific Ocean. Altogether, Russia's borders add up to more than 20,000 kilometers, nearly halfway around the globe. But it's not just the length that's impressive, it's the shape. In regions like the Baltics and Caucasus, the borders twist and curl in strange, unpredictable ways. You'll find narrow corridors, odd hooks, and towns where the road might cross 2 or 3 countries before reaching the next village. So what caused Russia's borders to end up so weird? In this video, we're unpacking the complex history, politics, and geography that shaped one of the most fascinating border stories in the world. Russia is home to some of the most extreme contrasts you'll find on our planet. It's a country where temperatures can swing from a scorching 45 degrees Celsius in summer to a bone-chilling minus 67 degrees in winter, the coldest inhabited place on Earth. It's the land of literary giants like Tolstoy and Dostoevsky, and the birthplace of scientific and technological milestones that changed the world. Think of Sputnik 1, humanity's first satellite, and Yuri Gagarin, the first person to journey beyond Earth's atmosphere. This country is also home to the Trans-Siberian Railway, stretching over 9,000 kilometers. And then there's Lake Baikal, the deepest and one of the oldest freshwater lakes on Earth, holding nearly 20% of the world's unfrozen surface freshwater. Yet, despite such grandeur, Russia's vast and varied geography has made it a country of incredibly complex borders, some that seem to follow no logic at all. Measuring over 17 million square kilometers, Russia is the world's largest country by landmass, bigger than the entire surface area of Pluto according to some comparisons. Despite this colossal size, it's only home to around 146 million people, which might seem small for such an expansive territory, but more than the numbers, it's the dramatic differences in climate, terrain, and culture across Russia that make its borders so fascinating. Within a single country, you can encounter everything from frozen tundras in Siberia to temperate forests in the west, along with mountain ranges like the Urals and Caucasus. The sheer scale of Russia presents a puzzle. How do you maintain consistent borders across continents, climates, and cultures? Understanding that puzzle is our first step towards unraveling the mystery of why these lines on the map look so odd. You see, Russia's border weirdness began centuries ago. The land we now call Russia started as a group of East Slavic principalities under the Kievan Rus in the 9th century. Over time, the Grand Duchy of Moscow, also known as Muscovy, expanded aggressively, especially eastward. By the 16th century, Ivan the Terrible launched campaigns that brought Siberia into the fold, adding massive land with very few people. The Russian Empire ballooned through wars, treaties, dynastic marriages, and opportunistic land grabs. For instance, the Treaty of Nerchinsk with China in 1689 was Russia's first treaty with an East Asian power and helped define part of the far eastern border. Later, Peter the Great pushed the empire westward towards the Baltic Sea, clashing with Sweden. Catherine the Great expanded southward, incorporating parts of modern-day Ukraine, Belarus, and Poland. But this rapid expansion came with a cost. Managing such a huge and diverse empire meant that borders often reflected political deals rather than cultural or geographic realities. Mountain passes, twisting river bends, and ancient trade routes often dictated where lines were drawn, not the cultures, languages, or even people on the ground. The result? Borders that made sense on paper but not always on the ground. And things were just getting started. The truly bizarre borders would emerge during the next major chapter, the Soviet Union. When the Soviet Union was formed in 1922, it brought together diverse republics, people, and cultures under a single centralized authority. Soviet planners faced a near impossible task, unifying territories sprawling across 2 continents while juggling staggering ethnic, linguistic, and geographic diversity. To achieve this, they created internal borders primarily driven by political strategy rather than geography or culture. The Soviet leadership employed a tactic known as national delimitation, intending to grant each major ethnic group its own administrative region, theoretically promoting harmony. However, this process frequently had another strategic motive, maintaining central control from Moscow. By mixing populations and drawing complicated boundaries, Soviet planners aimed to prevent any single group from gaining enough cohesion or strength to challenge the central government. Thus, ethnic Russians were dispersed strategically across the republics, creating pockets that were dependent on Moscow's administration. A striking illustration of Soviet border drawing chaos is the Fergana Valley, divided between modern-day Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, and Tajikistan. Instead of drawing neat lines along natural geographical features, Soviet cartographers intentionally fragmented this densely populated and ethnically diverse region. As a result, there are now numerous enclaves, small patches of one country surrounded entirely by another, causing frequent disputes and logistical nightmares for residents who must cross multiple international boundaries to perform everyday tasks. While these complex arrangements were designed as internal administrative boundaries within one state, they became international borders overnight with the Soviet Union's collapse in 1991. This rapid transformation turned manageable administrative divisions into major geopolitical headaches. Kaliningrad is perhaps Russia's most famous border oddity, standing as an isolated Russian exclave between Poland and Lithuania on the Baltic coast. Historically known as Königsberg, it was a major German city within East Prussia. After World War II, the Soviet Union annexed this region, expelled its German inhabitants, and resettled it predominantly with ethnic Russians. Today, Kaliningrad is geographically separated from the rest of Russia by over 300 kilometers, surrounded entirely by EU and NATO countries. This unique situation creates major logistical and diplomatic complications. To reach Kaliningrad by land, travelers and cargo must navigate through Lithuania or Poland, both EU and NATO members, often leading to friction and checkpoints. Lithuania in particular exercises control over transit and occasionally restricts passage, especially during times of heightened tension. This border peculiarity has strategic implications, with Russia maintaining significant military assets in the region, positioning Kaliningrad as a forward military outpost with heightened geopolitical importance. Another extraordinary example of Russia's bizarre borders exists further north, near the Estonian frontier. The Russian village of Dubki exemplifies a peculiar chessboard-style border. Here, the frontier zigzags erratically, slicing roads, farms, and even properties into two countries. Some houses technically stand on Russian soil, but their driveways extend into Estonia, and vice versa. This intricate patchwork border is a direct result of Soviet-era land distributions and collective farms, where land was allocated without regard for practical daily needs or future international border complications. In Russia's Far East, the Tumen River region offers yet another peculiar border scenario. Here, Russia shares a narrow 17-kilometer border with North Korea, squeezed tightly between North Korea and China. This tiny frontier creates significant geopolitical complexity. At one point, Russia, China, and North Korea converge closely enough that a bridge or tunnel could hypothetically connect all three within minutes. Yet, severe diplomatic tensions and strategic concerns make this improbable. This awkward, narrow Russian corridor between two powerful neighbors symbolizes the geopolitical chessboard that is Northeast Asia. And then there's the curious case of Barentsburg, a frozen outpost on Norway's Svalbard archipelago, where a slice of Russian life exists under Norwegian law. Although not officially Russian territory, Barentsburg hosts a significant Russian settlement. Thanks to a 1920 international treaty gaining rights to exploit coal resources, the town is entirely operated by Russia, with Russian currency, language, and even Russian infrastructure. Yet legally, it remains under Norwegian sovereignty. Across its vast expanse, Russia's borders tell a story of ambition, control, and centuries of strategic maneuvering, but also one of complicated legacies that still ripple through today's geopolitics. Russia's unusual borders aren't just historical oddities, they're active flashpoints that continue to generate tension today. One prominent dispute involves the Kuril Islands, situated between Russia's Kamchatka Peninsula and Japan's northern island, Hokkaido. These islands have been controlled by Russia since the end of World War II, yet Japan maintains a claim to the southernmost islands, referring to them as its northern territories. This disagreement has prevented both nations from signing a formal peace treaty more than 80 years after the war's end. Diplomatic talks regularly stall, influenced heavily by shifting internal policies and broader geopolitical dynamics. In the south, the Caucasus region provides another complicated border scenario. Areas like Abkhazia and South Ossetia, internationally recognized as parts of Georgia, declared independence with Russian support following intense conflicts in the early 1990s and again in 2008. Today, Russian military and economic backing enables these territories to operate independently from Georgian control. Russia recognizes both as sovereign states, but most of the international community sees them as Georgian territories occupied by Russia. The contested borders here remain militarized and diplomatically sensitive, perpetuating instability in the region. The most volatile and globally significant modern border dispute involves Ukraine. The annexation of Crimea in 2014 by Russia was widely condemned internationally as a violation of sovereignty. The tension dramatically escalated in February 2022, when Russia launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine, transforming regional border disputes into a major international crisis. As a result, the border lines continue shifting in real time amid conflict, underscoring the instability of Russia's western frontier. Lastly, the Arctic has emerged as a major geopolitical flashpoint as melting sea ice opens up new frontiers. Russia has been assertively staking claims to vast stretches of the Arctic continental shelf, leading to overlapping disputes with Canada, Denmark, and the US. Although frameworks like the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea exist to manage such conflicts, tensions remain, showing that Russia's borders are not fixed, but are constantly evolving through both political ambition and environmental change. In many ways, Russia's frontiers are still a work in progress. For anyone fascinated by geography, global politics, or history, Russia offers a living blueprint of how borders are drawn, challenged, and redrawn. And as the world keeps changing, one thing is clear: the story of Russia's borders is far from over. Of course, with a country this massive, we couldn't cover every single border twist, exclave, or territorial oddity in one video. There's a lot more to explore if you want to dive even deeper. Which other countries' borders do you think are just as fascinating or complex? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and if you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories from around the world.